last week, the events that, just unfolded in such terror, they underscored how much the remnants of a tropical system can really impact a flood setup.
So we bring in Fox Weather hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross this hour. Bryan, thanks for joining us. I am wondering, meteorologically speaking, if you would call this a unique setup. I would imagine so, but I only ask because this time of year in Texas, it's unique because you can get a lot of moisture that pools in Texas, but often it's not tapped by a system. It's just humid.
Yes, well, we had a very, and we still have actually, kind of a semi-permanent kind of weather pattern that's taking the flow out of the tropics and then turning it north over Mexico and into Texas, and also, of course, driving the tropical disturbances there for the longest time off into the eastern Pacific. So that very strong high-pressure system over the Atlantic, driving tropical moisture into Texas is the first ingredient, and then Tropical Storm Barry and the remnants of that little disorganized system got up in that flow and got up into Texas. So now you have a little bit of spin there. And then you have this complex of thunderstorms coming out of the west, actually came out of Mexico, kind of a typical Texas plains kind of development. And they happen to come together over the western part of the hill country there and at the top of the various river basins, including the river that, of course, flows through Kerr County and down to Kerrville and caused all the incredible devastation that we've seen. But as Britta said earlier, it wasn't just that river. It was other rivers in the area as well.
Compared it to pouring water into a funnel, right? I mean, that terrain is a big function of how this all moved through, but there are so many parts to this, Bryan, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I think you talk about this failure of imagination when we deal with maybe the breakdown that occurred. Alerts were sent out. Weather Service, from what it looks like, operated under their protocols. Where did the system break down then, I think, is a big question that we still have.
Yeah, the 4 stages of the National Weather Service system really worked about as well as they can work in the modern world. We got the outlook that said a few days in advance that said the conditions were coming together that could cause a big problem. And then the watch came out the day before saying, all right, a higher probability now that there could be a big problem here. And then the warning came out. Unfortunately, things came together. It was 1 o'clock in the morning Central Time when that happened. And then the emergency, when it was indeed happening and they saw that they needed to get this red flag flying, that this was going to happen again in the middle of the night, though, on July 4th. So all of that worked. But the problem became after that is who was going to take that information and have the imagination and the understanding of the topography there, of the very hard riverbed that just makes the water flow fast, of the flood zones around that river. Who was going to understand that to say, this has the possibility of being the worst case, have that in their imagination, in their mind. Therefore, we have to take extreme action here because we need to mitigate this potential worst case scenario. That's where the system broke down, and that person and those people with that responsibility need to be identified, and we need to understand how to do that in every community across the United States, and it's very difficult. I don't minimize that challenge, but it's not just, it just starts with the warnings, and then the action part of it is called emergency management, and that's where that imagination and understanding needs to take place.
Now, Bryan, this is not a unique threat. I'm a native Texan, and we had Wimberley in 2015. We had what happened in 1987 across the Guadalupe River. Of course, to this magnitude, this is a new benchmark for sure. But I do think part of what has made this so bad is that it was 4th of July. Any Texan, 4th of July weekend, wants to be on a river, whether it's the Frio, the San Gabriel, the Guadalupe, the Brazos. That's what you do as a Texan. You take your family, you go to the river, you're either in camp with your kids or you're camping with your family together. So, there's so many questions that will be answered. Of course, right now, the most appropriate thing is let's find everybody, because, we still have people that are missing.
Right.
And pushing this forward and kind of looking at moving forward through tropic season, moving forward with the rain forecast that we have this weekend, how do we move forward?
Well, yeah, so I think that I don't see any solution here except for a top-down structure that says, okay, here's what the federal government's responsibility is, but here's what state government, community government, and then the responsibility of anybody who aggregates people in potential danger. For example, if you have a hotel that's along the beachfront on the Gulf Coast of Florida, you have some responsibility for those people, it seems to me, because those people that come and stay at your hotel right on the beach in hurricane season, they don't know the region. You can't communicate them in terms of go east of so-and-so street or take so-and-so street to some evacuation zone or whatever it is. You need to have someone who has thought this out. How are we going to deal with this problem if the worst case happens and these people that I'm responsible for have to get out of harm's way? So we need to distribute that responsibility, but assign it to the individuals that can actually take action if this worst case scenario does indeed develop, even in the middle of the night, even on July 4th. And as you say, that was definitely a mitigating factor here.
And I think just to sum it up, before we let you go, we look at the death toll, and especially when we look at that count involving more than 36 children as it stands now, Bryan, there was a breakdown, and there was maybe or should be a change going forward. Your takeaway from this event, because we talk about in 2025 how this is rivaling some of the deadliest disasters that we've seen in Texas from a freshwater river flooding event, but those are back several decades. There should be some sort of improvement, but what's your takeaway?
Yeah, so we do have a system that is in place. NOAA weather radio is important, but that doesn't tie into emergency management very well. That's weather alerts. We have another system that's actually on the air around much of the country people don't even know about, called Next Gen TV, that it blankets many parts of the country with signals that could be utilized for emergency information. And then we have obviously cell phone systems and satellite systems and so forth. And we need to think about a holistic plan that takes into account all of modern technology. But it really starts with one thing I learned in Hurricane Andrew when people ask me, what's your number one takeaway from your experience in Hurricane Andrew or Katrina or Sandy or these other horrific things that I've been through? And I said, my takeaway is that you have to imagine that the worst does happen. Mm-hmm. You can't say, it can't happen to me, it's never happened before. If the experts say that this is a danger and this is a danger zone, then you have to think, what is the worst case and how do we mitigate that and how do we get people in safe places just in case that happens? Indeed, you prepare for the worst and you hope for the best. That's the only way that you can operate when you have this level of danger possible.
I think as Americans, we are very blessed to many times walk around feeling like someone's going to hold our hand, and many times people do. But if it's one thing I learned post-Harvey and going through Harvey with my family, it is very important to take self-responsibility. And sometimes it does come down to you making the right choice in a hard moment. Bryan Norcross, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insight.